Although I am not against meal planning, it isn't something that typically works for me long term. I've had seasons where I diligently spend one evening a week to gather up recipes and shop for all of the ingredients to complete my menu. Inevitably, we get busy or I lose my momentum and I need to fall back on a rhythm of getting healthy food on the table without a plan. That is what this video is about. I recently was a speaker at the Modern Homestead Expo where I shared how to get from scratch meals on the table 3 times a day without losing your sanity. That was the name of the topic. I put together tips that I use to create a flow in my kitchen that doesn't rely on meal planning, but instead feels intuitive and easy. I want to share today some more of my top tips for how you can not meal plan and still cook from scratch, maybe take some of the stress out of it. Sometimes meal plans neglect seasonality and require expensive ingredients that you only use for one purpose. This can lead to a lot of waste, and when you lean more into a flow in your kitchen, you can be flexible to include ingredients that are on sale, in season, or in abundance for you. I like to say, what would grandma do? My grandma was born in 1918. She married my grandpa and had 14 children. She was a busy farm wife and from scratch cook. I don't think she had time every week to scroll Pinterest and carefully plan out her week on a dry erase board. She simply gathered food and cooked it. My dad recalls her taking an old hen straight from the yard and serving it alongside homemade white bread, vegetables, and a scratch-made pie for dessert. In the summer, there was lots of fresh produce. She cooked what she had and set it all out on the table. If it wasn't meat, it was beans. If it wasn't fresh, it was canned. The first key to not meal planning but still cooking from scratch and healthy meals is to have a well-stocked pantry, fridge, and freezer. Now, you can always add in fresh and seasonal things like milk, greens, herbs, fruit, and citrus on a weekly basis, but stocking your home with staples that keep for many months or even a year will ensure that you always have options to pull from. So let's first talk about my pantry. Things I won't go without: Redmond real salt in bulk, cumin, chili powder, garlic powder, onion powder, peppercorns, and a pepper grinder, Italian seasoning blend, cinnamon. For fats, lard, tallow, butter, coconut oil, avocado oil, and olive oil all have a place in my kitchen. I use cocoa powder, baking soda, baking powder, and make sure to stock those in bulk. For condiments, I keep organic salsa, ketchup, coconut aminos, date chili sauce, date barbecue sauce, mustard, and Worcestershire sauce. For grains and flour, I do all-purpose, I do einkorn, kamut, spelt, wheat berries, rolled oats, popcorn, rice, quinoa, dried pasta, and cornmeal. And for sweeteners, organic cane sugar, brown sugar, honey, maple syrup, date sugar, powdered sugar, and syrup. Now, before I go further, I do want to tell you that you can get this whole list, the full list of all of the things I keep stocked in my fridge, pantry, and freezer that I'm going to be rattling off here over at bit.ly/farmhouse on Boone, no meal planning. I'll also leave it linked in the description box below. One way that I stay on top of meals is by stocking the things that I need in my pantry, fridge, and freezer. And one of my favorite ways to do that is by using Thrive Market, which happens to be the sponsor of today's video. Thrive Market is a membership-based online grocery store that offers a wide selection of organic and natural ingredients, snacks, frozen items, spices, condiments, pantry staples like canned goods, so much to choose from. And I love that on the Thrive Market website, you can sort by dietary preference. So if you are paleo, gluten-free, dairy-free, you can only see those options and filter by that. So it makes for a very streamlined, easy shopping experience. The groceries come delivered right to your door. Orders over $49 ship free, so it's very convenient. For my large family, I'm always needing a large amount to stock and make sure we're ready to cook healthy meals on the fly, and Thrive Market helps us accomplish that. Thrive Market offers 2 membership options. So you can pay month to month, billed at $12 a month, or for the whole year, you can get a discount at only $59.95. We live in a small town. At our grocery store in town, it's very hard to find organic ingredients, high quality things like einkorn flour or organic canned tomatoes. I can't really find there, and if I can at another grocery store a little further away, they're a much more expensive price than I can find on Thrive Market. Thrive Market is offering Farmhouse on Boone viewers 30% off your first order plus a free gift worth up to $60 by using my link, thrivemarket.com/farmhouse on Boone. It'll also be linked in the description box below. Okay, back on that pantry. Nuts and beans. I keep black beans, white beans, peanut butter, walnuts, pecans. For canned goods, tomato sauce, tomato paste, dried tomatoes, pumpkin puree, green beans, black beans, jam, pasta sauce, pizza sauce, coconut milk, applesauce, and salmon. For snacks and treats, avocado oil fried chips, granola, organic tortilla chips. I also keep large quantities of organic grape juice in glass jars on hand for homemade water kefir. I sometimes use wild cherry juice as well. I keep raisins, dates, nutritional yeast, collagen peptides, and greens powders for smoothies, gelatin, pectin, citric acid, rennet, apple cider vinegar, balsamic vinegar, whole bean coffee, chia seeds, shredded coconut. This is just my pantry staples. You'll have to figure out what makes you feel prepared to cook most things in your own home, and being well stocked with things that don't go bad is crucial. If possible, use an extra room in the house, basement or garage, to set up a spot for bulk food storage. Shelving and food grade storage buckets are very helpful. All right, let's talk about the fridge. Sauerkraut is always in my refrigerator because it's long lasting and it also tastes fresh. Though I don't have them on hand at all times, it's nice to have fermented carrots, onions, and garlic to throw on top of dishes. I love having things that I can pull out of the fridge to serve with a meal with no prep time. Now, cheese keeps for a year plus, so you almost can't overbuy it. A quality organic cheddar cheese can serve as the protein source in so many dishes. I also stock mozzarella, Parmesan, and cream cheese, and then so many eggs. Now, right now we're keeping our eggs at room temperature because they're fresh. When all else fails, eggs can almost be a meal on their own. They're full of protein and you don't have to thaw them out. If you keep your grains and flour stocked, you can serve them with waffles or pancakes for a quick meal. Root vegetables keep for a very long time, so you can stock them with confidence. You'll hardly ever find my refrigerator without garlic, onions, carrots, and potatoes. Every meal starts with an onion. I also keep some salami for quick and easy sandwiches on sourdough. In the freezer, I order meat in bulk. If you can afford it, buying half a cow, a whole hog, whole chickens, so that there's always protein to center the meals around. So when I call in my cut list to the butcher, I put more things into ground beef and sausage than their typical customer. That's because they can thaw really quickly. I also get them in 1 pound packages instead of 2. That makes for some quick thawing meat. In a pinch, I can put a couple of packages in hot water and still have a fast dinner. I also do stock chicken breasts from a local farm. Chicken breasts are fast thawing, but I really can't recommend them if you're on a tighter budget. It's less expensive to just get whole chickens. Pork shoulder roast and beef roast cook quickly in a pressure cooker and work great for tacos and enchiladas. I also keep frozen fruit on hand, frozen butter. Yes, you can stock large quantities of butter, keep them in the freezer. And you really can't run a from scratch kitchen without a lot of fat. We do opt for butter more than anything else. Keep frozen vegetables, frozen fish. Now for the weekly rotation, raw milk, yogurt, kefir, citrus fruit, avocados, that's what I'm getting to supplement all of these staples that I stock in the fridge, freezer, and pantry. Right now is gardening season, so we are adding in a lot of fresh things that we either get from the farmer's market or from our own garden, or even abundance that comes from people we know. That's happened. We've gotten tons of food from people who say, hey, can you use this? And of course we will. The key to making your kitchen flow easily is knowing what you're doing in there. Nothing will make a busy evening stressful like a complicated meal that requires you to thoroughly read how-to instructions every step of the way. Skills in the kitchen will take shape over time, but you can start here. Master 3 different methods of preparing meat. My favorites are roasting, searing, and pressure cooking. I'm getting my favorite bread going now and started, but later in this video, I'm going to be spatchcocking a chicken. It's essentially roasting a chicken, but opening up the back and laying it flat so everything cooks more evenly. Another fundamental kitchen skill is learn to season food properly. Get familiar with which herbs and spices work together to make tacos and which ones will lend a more Italian flavor to your dishes. Knowing these basic things will keep you from being in a tizzy when you realize you have no taco seasoning when you're already halfway through browning your beef. Always remember, salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder go a long way in almost anything. I find that most people undersalt and then wonder why they like restaurant food better than a home-cooked meal. Salt and butter will make it taste like restaurant food. Get one favorite bread recipe and make it over and over again. So for me, a half freshly milled whole grain, half all-purpose artisan no-knead boule is what I have memorized. I make over and over again. It requires no thought because I do it so much. And so to get that one favorite bread recipe, master that basic technique is such a tip. Learn when and which fats to use. So for example, butter works best to fry an egg on a cast iron skillet, but lard and tallow are better frying oils. Get comfortable with the basics of soup. So more on that in a bit, but all soups are basically the same thing. When you learn how soups are constructed, you can throw dozens of different kinds together easily and quickly. Still on that mastering the basic techniques, learn how to throw together homemade mayo and make a quick salad dressing, how to make a basic gravy or cream sauce for pasta or vegetables, how to make bone broth, and the fermentation basics. So that's my list of basic techniques. If you just get those down, you can throw together almost anything. All right, now that we have our pantry, freezer, fridge stocked, we're bringing in the weekly rotation, we've mastered the basic techniques, it's time to actually put this all together. So what I always do is I start with my protein. At the beginning of the week, I put in various cuts and types of meat into the refrigerator. So for example, 2 whole chickens, 3 pounds of ground beef, 1 pound of bacon, 1 chuck roast, etc., etc. If you have a large family like me, you may need to fill up 2 glass dishes in your fridge. Earlier in the week, you'll cook from the faster thawing meats like ground beef, ground sausage, bacon, and steaks, and then it'll take a few more days for large roasts and whole chickens to thaw, so those will get cooked later in the week. When you put the meat into the refrigerator, you don't need to know exactly what you'll make with it or how you'll prepare it. You just need to have it thawing. Your schedule throughout the week will dictate what you do with it. If you end up being out of the house a whole lot that week, you may end up using the slow cooker or Instant Pot more. If you're home most of the day, you may want to utilize more hands-on methods like searing, roasting, grilling, frying. Seasonality will also play a big role in what you decide to do with the meat. In the winter, a lot of our ground beef gets made into chili and soup, but in the summer, it goes on the grill or stuffed in a taco with fresh peppers and tomatoes from the garden. The key is preparedness, but flexibility. My next tip is to prep when you can. So with sourdough, contrary to popular belief, timing isn't everything. I find that so many bakers don't start something sourdough because they'd have to wake up in the middle of the night to stretch and fold it or bake it during baseball practice. I know people who put when they're going to bake sourdough on the schedule for weeks in advance because they're looking for a day when they have nothing going. It does not have to be quite that complicated. It's a lot more forgiving. So here are a few tips for that. Use the refrigerator to pause the process at any time. Most doughs can actually stay in the fridge for many days with nearly the same results. Rely more on recipes that are less likely to over ferment, especially in the summer. Some of those artisan boules can over ferment if you don't know what you're doing or if you're not in the kitchen much. So doughs with lower hydration like bagels and enriched doughs that have added fats like brioche and sweet rolls can really handle a lot of time at room temperature without over fermenting and losing their structure. Also, you can use sourdough discard instead of active starter. The dough tends to take a little longer to rise, which you can use to your advantage. If you have a free afternoon or you can make a few hours in your schedule, make several different doughs and get them all in the fridge for the week ahead. Get the flour, sugar, salt, honey, all out one time. Get the mixer and measuring spoons dirty once, and then all week you'll have something quick and easy to make for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Again, you don't need to know precisely what you'll do with all the stuff you're making. You're just giving yourself options because who knows what the week will throw at you, and anytime you can bust that hamburger dough out of the fridge, shape it, and then bake it. So as long as you put it together, knead it, let it do that first ferment, stash it in the fridge, you can pick it out at any time. Here's a sample of what I would make on a prep day. 2 sourdough pie crusts. These get wrapped in plastic wrap and go immediately in the fridge. 1 recipe of pizza dough, which yields 4 pizza crusts. I allow that to ferment for about 8 to 12 hours, then cover the bowl with foil and place it in the fridge until I want it. 1 recipe of sourdough buns. Again, I do that bulk ferment, then stash it in the fridge. Sweet roll dough, and then if I'm really feeling ambitious, sourdough pastry dough. It's a labor of love, but you can keep them in the fridge for a week plus. Now, all of these things that I'm making in my sourdough prep day, I'm doing half whole grain. So the recipes over on farmhouseonboone.com are for all purpose, but you can easily swap out half freshly milled whole grain with very similar results. That's what works for me in my kitchen. Yes, it's healthier to do all whole grain. Yes, it's fluffier to do all purpose. I just meet in the middle and do half of each, and that works great for our family. Other things I might bulk prep if I have some time: large batches of granola, dairy like mozzarella cheese, ricotta, yogurt, Greek yogurt, butter, meat. I might roast more than 1 chicken at once, cook a huge pork shoulder roast, low and slow in the oven to use as pulled pork throughout the week. Those are all those things that if you do have some extra time, you can really set yourself up for quick meals later on. All right, let's talk about soups and mastering them. Most soups are basically the same. The process goes like this. Saute the vegetables in butter, sprinkle in a little flour for thickening, add broth, season to taste, add cooked protein, add a carb, simmer, add toppings. There are variations that make all soups different. So one variation is how you cut the vegetable, whether you dice it, shred it, cube it, which vegetables you add. Most soup tastes great with the big 5: celery, carrots, potatoes, garlic, and onions. If you're making squash soup, you'll only use garlic, onions, but add squash. If you're making tomato soup like I am today, you'll do garlic and onions and then add tomatoes. Another variation, which protein you add: beans, ground beef, shredded beef, pork, chicken. Now, in the case of tomato soup, I'm not adding any protein, but instead of putting toast or a roll on the side, I'm adding protein in the grilled cheese. But usually there's some kind of protein I actually throw into the soup. I guess tomato soup's a bad example, but my uncle gave me so many tomatoes from his garden, he was overrun with them. Another variation, which carb you add: rice, noodles, barley. Whether or not you blend the soup, part of the soup, or none of it, that's another variation. Some soups benefit from cheese or cream stirred in at the end. Toppings you add at the end can make it different: diced avocado, herbs, sour cream. So you can see there's this basic process, and then there's little tweaks along the way that make it a whole different soup, but it still was kind of basically the same thing. So it's nice when you know this, because you can make any kind of soup with what you have. If life throws you tomatoes, you can make tomato soup. If it's squash, you can make squash soup. If you have a lot of ground beef, a nice cheeseburger soup, or any kind of soup with burger, and you throw in other vegetables or other herbs. As long as you know that simple process, you don't need to look up a recipe. You just see, what do I have? And then make something with it. I also rely heavily on skillet dinners and melts. So the process is cook meats and veggies, possibly a carb, in a large cast iron skillet, season to taste, add shredded cheese while it's hot so it melts over the filling, and then add some toppings. You can also add a sourdough topping before the cheese and bake it. You can find that recipe over on farmhouseonboone.com. Just search sourdough skillet. Today, I am making a quick pasta with the skills I was telling you about, knowing how to make a basic cream sauce, something I do all the time in my kitchen without measuring. So I add a little bit of butter, maybe some onions or garlic, thicken with flour, add some milk or cream, and then blend it. It's the same basic concept for gravy. Earlier in the week, I showed you I took the drippings from my roast, added some flour, thickened it up, added some salt. I think it's important to learn how to throw together soups, skillet dinners, gravies, cream sauces, and casseroles without a recipe, because this will allow you to use what you have on hand, and it'll require less planning and no waste. No two soups or skillet dinners are alike. The idea starts by looking in your fridge or pantry to see what you have. For fast food, quick meals, we rely on sourdough cheddar waffle sandwiches. Breakfast for dinner is always a good option. Big salads, you can take a bed of greens and add on whatever you got. Nachos, salmon patties, cold charcuterie style lunches like hard-boiled eggs, cheeses, and then tacos over and over again in the rotation. Well, I hope that you enjoyed hearing some of my tips for how I can get from scratch meals on the table without meal planning. Check my last What We Eat in a Week style video to scroll a few videos back, because I shared what this could actually look like. I shared 7 days of breakfast, lunch, and dinner with these principles in mind, sort of embracing a flow and not a rigid plan. And I hope that you enjoyed seeing some of the things that I cooked this week with that in mind as well. As always, thank you so much for stopping by our farmhouse.